Bhagavate uttam shloke bhaktir bhavatir naishtiki Om Ajnantimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurum Bhagavate uttam Shri Guruve Namaha Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mukham karoti vachanam pangam langyate gire yakripatamam vande Shri Gurudin Paramanandam. Hare Krishna, thank you again for joining. And I see Achyuta back here after a long time. I hope you're in India, right, Achyuta?
Yes, but he's still here, still in India. So it's 4:30 in the morning, but
Oh, you're still in India. Are you working remotely or are you off?
yeah, Prabhu, I'm working. So
Okay.
yeah, good to be here. Good to be in your class again.
Good to see you. Okay, so we'll start with resume our discussion. Varshana Mataji, will you be able to read the translation of the verses?
I can read now, Prabhu. I might have to leave in about 15 minutes. Like I'll be on the road in 15 minutes.
Okay. So maybe I can ask somebody else to do it. I don't see. Lalita Mataji, can you do the translations?
Oh, yes.
Okay, so we'll be doing from 4:28:37. Okay, so resuming from 4:28:37. Shitoshnavatavarsani Shrutipase Priya Priye Sukha Dukhe Iti Dvandvanya Ajayat Samadharshanaha.
For austerity, King Mahatwaja in body, mind. Sorry, Babu, I was on mute. Through austerity, King Mahadwaja in body and mind gradually become equal to the dualities of cold and heat, happiness and distress, wind and rain, hunger and thirst, the pleasant and the unpleasant. In this way, he conquered all relativities.
So this section of the chapter is talking about Maladhwaja after living a grahastha life, ruling his kingdom, renounced his kingdom, and now he has gone into the forest accompanied by his wife, Vedarbi, and he's now engaging into the performance of austerities. So here we get an understanding of what is the real reason that austerities are performed, and that is to develop detachment from the senses. Like in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Matra Sparshastu Kaunteya, Shitosuna Sukha Dukhata, and then he says, Tam Titakshasva Bharat. Right? So he says that Titakshasva means learn to tolerate. So one of the first instructions given by Krishna to Arjun, and by developing this tolerance, one is able to get less involved into the material conception. It may not necessarily result in spiritual advancement, but it definitely reduces the material conception. So Prabhupada, he comments on the last line of the verse, where it says, Ajayat Sama Darshana. Prabhupada says that liberation means becoming free from the relativities of the world. Now, this does not, so Prabhupada chooses his words carefully. This does not necessarily mean going back to Godhead, having a relationship with Krishna, but at least it means being liberated from the material world. And equanimity is the way to acquire that liberation. Srila Prabhupada, in the purport, he comments that in the present day and age, severe austerities are not possible. And he says even the minimal recommended austerities of following the 4 regulative principles is difficult to observe. But then he gives assurance that with the performance of Bhakti Yoga, the austerities are not that important. Obviously, they are recommended. Prabhupada says that if one is factually engaged in the service of the Lord, then automatically the senses are controlled. Automatically his tongue is controlled and many other things are controlled. So that is why externally they may look like austerities, but they're actually not austerities. Like sometimes people ask devotees that, how do you live such a life in which you have to constantly say no to everything? No, I cannot eat out. No, I cannot do this. No, I cannot do that. And many times the devotees get surprised because they don't look at it that way. Because for every one no that they're saying there is a yes that is more than compensating for that no. That no, I cannot eat out. Yes, I can eat prasadam. And prasadam is a lot more sumptuous. That no, I don't want to take intoxication, but yes, I want to sing and dance in as if intoxicated in kirtan. So for every no, there is a yes. So it may look like it's an austerity from outside, but for the practicing devotee, you have to actually tell them. That's why Prabhupada says that they automatically come as a byproduct. Okay, verse 38. Tapasa vedyaya pakva shayo niyame yamaha yuyujye brahmanyatmanam vijitiksha.
By worshipping, executing austerities, and following the regulative principles, King Malaya Dwaja conquered his senses, his life, and his consciousness. Thus, he fixed everything on the central point of the Supreme Brahman, Krishna.
So we see the ongoing development of Malayadwaja, that by performing austerity, he was able to control his senses. Now we see that he has also controlled his consciousness. So this is a symptom of Astanga Yoga. That a person who has advanced in the angas of Astanga, when they reach the stage of dhyan and samadhi, then not only is their senses controlled, their mind is controlled, and so is their consciousness. So here it is said that Malayadwaja fixed his mind on Brahman. And Prabhupada in Parens says Krishna, because it's not necessary that Astanga Yoga has to lead to Brahman or Paramatma. We see the example of Dhruva Maharaj, that he was performing Ashtanga Yoga, but he was worshipping Lord Vishnu. We see the example of Kardamu Muni, that he was sitting on the banks of Bindu Sarovar. 10,000 years he was performing austerities, but he was meditating on Krishna. So Prabhupada, he explains in the purport that whenever the word Brahman appears, the impersonalists take this to mean the impersonal effulgence, the Brahma Jyoti. Actually, however, Parabrahman, the Supreme Brahman, is Krishna, Vasudeva. In 719, Vasudeva Sarvam Itihi. Vasudeva extends somewhere. One cannot fix one's mind on an impersonal something. Bhagavad Gita says, Kleshottaras Tesham Avyatashakta Chetasham. That for famous response by Krishna to Arjuna when he asked, which is better, those who worship a personal or impersonal form, said that impersonal worship is different. So the point Prabhupada making here, that Prabhupada is making here, is that Krishna is Brahman, but Brahman may not necessarily be Krishna. So that's why he's saying Vasudeva Sarvamiti. Krishna is everything, including Brahman. And Brahman, as in a lot of these words, it means many things. Brahman, it means that which causes to grow, that which is not material, that which is transcendental. So all of them can also point to the personality of Godhead. Verse 39. Ashte sthanurivai katra divyam varsha satam stiraha Vasudeva Bhagavati Nanyadvedavaham ratim.
In this way, he stayed immovable in one place for 100 years by the calculations of the demigods. After this time, he developed pure devotional attraction for Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and remained fixed in that position.
So this verse substantiates what Prabhupada says Brahman means in the previous verse. Let's see. Somebody is speaking also. No, I think maybe it's you, Prem Kishore Prabhu. You want to maybe mute yourself? Okay.
No, I'm not.
It's not you? Who's speaking then? Everybody is mute.
I think Prabhuji, before she muting herself, somebody background, I think some noise.
Okay, no worries. So as I was saying, that this verse talks about or reinforces the point that Prabhupada made in the previous verse, that when it is said Brahman, here it is explicitly said Vasudeva Bhagavati. Right? So it's explicitly it is said that he developed bhakti for Krishna, more than bhakti. He developed a complete attachment for Krishna. So Chakravarti Pad, when he's commenting on this verse, he says that by this practice of meditation on the Lord, rati for the Lord appear. Then how can one relate? So generally when we talk about bhakti, we say that bhakti is quick. You do bhakti and Krishna reciprocates. Here it is said that for 100 years by the calculation of the demigods, which is 36,000 of his years, how do we relate to the fact that it took him such a long time to, and he was single-minded, to get rati? Prabhupada gives a slightly different explanation. So what Prabhupada notes is that the fact that he stayed immovable, it said sthanur eva ekatra, that he was at one place he was staying, he was just staying at that one place. So what that conveys is that King Malayadwaja, he executed austerities and penances for 36,000 years, right? So 100 years of the demigods, it's, you times that with 360, 36,000. Now, given the fact that Malayadwaja had taken a human form of life, which only extends for 100 years, what it indicates is that he took several births. After, and in every birth, he continued to go deeper and deeper in his, so Stanureva Ekatra means that his conception of devotion stayed. And he became more and more fixed. And then eventually after the number of births that took him to span the 100 years of demigods, he developed rati, or strong attachment to Krishna. So this indicates two things. One, it indicates that bhakti is never destroyed. That as he was taking every birth, he was making continuous advancements. And second, also it indicates, so Prabhupada calls Bahunam Janmanam Ante, that reaching the stage of Vasudeva Bhagavat Rati, it requires single focused attention on the Lord. So Prabhupada makes this point that one may take many births before they take to reach the stage of bhakti. So in the purport, Prabhupada writes that this confirms the conclusion of Krishna. To come to the conclusion of Krishna consciousness and to remain fixed in the realization that Krishna is everything, as well as render service unto Krishna, are the characteristics of the personal perfectional stage. So essentially, Prabhupada is writing the rough translation of 790. Bahunam Janmanam Ante Jnanamama Prapadyanti. Then he says that in CC Madhya 2262, it is said, Krishna Bhakti Kaile Sarve Karmarhithaya. That one comes to the conclusion that Krishna is everything by worshipping or rendering devotional service unto Krishna. One actually becomes perfect in all respects. Not only one must come to the conclusion that Krishna is everything, but he must remain fixed in this realization. So this talks about the multiple births. That one may, in one birth, come to this conclusion that Krishna is everything. But for the person to become fixed in that realization, it may take many births. So this purport is a little bit in odd with the prevalent, what Prabhupada tells us, what we understand when we begin our practice of bhakti, that in this particular lifetime, perfect your life and go back to Godhead. Right? So nobody has ever told me this, that you start the process of Bhakti Prabhu and 10,000 lifetimes later on you might go back to Godhead. And everybody tells this only, that at least try to finish it in this lifetime only. And the reason that we are able to reconcile these statements with the ones that we have is the presence of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. That because of Mahaprabhu, Kali Yuga Avtara, Harinam Namane, so because of all that he has given us, we are, not that we are like more and more powerful or more potent, in fact it's the opposite, but the mercy is more powerful, the mercy is more potent. So much so that what could not have been done, even through the process of bhakti, in the earlier ages, is now being made more accessible to us simply if we follow the instructions of Mahaprabhu coming through the Sampradaya. Okay, moving on to verse 40. Savyapakatyat atmanam Vyatikritat yatmani Vidvan swapna ivamarsha Sakshinam viraramaha.
King Malayadwaja attained perfect knowledge by being able to distinguish the super soul from the individual soul. The individual soul is localized, whereas the super soul is all pervasive. He became perfect in knowledge that the material body is not the soul, but that the soul is a witness of the material body.
So previous verse talked about Rati, right? So in the previous verse, it was explicitly said, Nanyad Vedo Vavam Ratim. That after going through several lifetimes, Vasudeva Bhagavate Ratim, he acquires the stage of Rati. This verse talks about him reaching the stage of Prema. Now, Prema essentially is Rati that is intensified. There's no substantive difference between Rati and Prema, only that Prema is a more advanced stage of Rati. So Vishwanath Chakravarti says, Prema is essentially intense Rati, and King Malayadwaja fainted in the ecstasy of love. So it becomes more pervasive. Now, here again, one may question that after so many austerities and so many lifetimes or so many years, whichever way you look at it, and coming to, so Prema is the absolute topmost stage of Bhakti, right? It's the stage where you are Shuddha Bhakta. Now, what is being mentioned over here? That Malayadwaja is now recognizing the self as the soul and the Lord as the super soul. This is a pretty preliminary stage, that recognizing the self as the, in fact, one begins to recognize it even before they enter Bhakti. One begins to recognize that I'm not the body but the soul, and more advancement, one begins to understand that the Lord is the super soul. At the stage of Prema, one is actually firmly fixed in their relationship to Krishna. It already the understanding of their Siddha Pranali, what is my eternal relationship to Krishna in the spiritual world is there. So in order to understand this, one way to understand it is seeing the way that Vishwanath Chakravarti, he translates this verse, which is different from Prabhupada. So he translates Swapnaiva into as if in a dream, and Amarsa Sakshanam to deliberation witnessed. So the statement that he translates is that it was like seeing a dream whose witness is internal deliberation. So how does he explain that? So what Vishwanath Chakravarti says that this verse talks about actually witnessing the Lord as opposed to realizing the Lord. Now the other stages of Atma Gyan and Paramatma Gyan, one becomes firmly fixed in their realization. So they understand that or more than understand, they realize that I am the soul, Krishna is Paramatma, Krishna is the Supreme Lord. Now Malayadwaja is actually experiencing those realizations. both within and without. So reaching the stage of prema, now he is actually seeing the Lord. So so Jiva Goswami makes this point that when a devotee makes advancement in their spiritual life, then they are asked to reject pratyaksh praman and take to shabda praman, right? Because the four defects, etc. So they say that don't go with what you see, go with what you are told from a bona fide source, right? So in the earlier stage, Shabda Praman is recommended. But what happens is that as the devotees perfect their life, then Pratyaksh Praman becomes stronger. King Malay Dwaja had matured to the stage of Rati and Prema. So now Pratyaksh, by his own spiritualized senses, he was now seeing the Lord. He was actually seeing the self as the soul. So in Bhagavad Gita 9.2, Krishna glorifies bhakti as pratyaksha avagamam dharmayam. Bhakti is that dharma that gives one pratyaksh, direct experience of the self, which is seeing actually oneself as the soul. And then later on in 10th canto, chapter 48, verse 19 says that thus one can perceive you. So this is speaking to Krishna. Thus one can perceive you in many different forms by hearing from authorities and by direct experience. Right? So this is the glorification of Pratyaksh Praman. And when actually becomes more advanced, then one can actually perceive Krishna by the senses. The difference is that the senses are no longer material senses. Srila Prabhupada, in a lecture that he gave on the Bhagavatam, he says that Krishna or God's position is adhoksaja. So aksha means eyes. So akshaj means direct perception. Sometimes we say, can you show me God? This is called akshaj. But he cannot be seen by these eyes. Therefore, his name is adhoksaj. Adha krita akshajam jnanam. You cannot see God by direct perception. You have to create your eyes. You have to create your senses so that you can see God, you can touch God, you can talk with God, you can feel God's presence. Therefore, his name is Adhoksaj. Right? So Prabhupada is making this point that simply by our material senses, Krishna is beyond senses. But when the senses have become advanced, then it becomes akshaj. Akshaj means that now he can be perceived by the senses. So Narad Muni explains the advancement of Malayadvaj with an analogy. So just like the hunger of a person is not relieved by eating food in a dream. Right? The person is dreaming that he's eating food, but if he's hungry, he'll stay hungry. So similarly, the longings of a devotee are not satiated simply by realizing the Lord either through the eyes of the scriptures or by some other forms, right? So in this verse, the function of the antakaran are, so it said the witness. So the antakaran are the internal senses. The function of the antakaran called reflection is witness. So because the pain of separation does not disappear by the function of the antakaran, it is said that he also realized the Lord who appeared in his vision directly with his eyes. And so Chakravarti Pad is taking the word witness and explaining it a little differently. That as the devotees are making advancements, they are perceiving the Lords by the antakaran, by their internal senses. But then he says that this is like a hungry person dreaming that he's eating food. Ultimately, the person has to eat food. So ultimately, the devotees, they need to have personal darshan of Krishna. So when it is said vidvan, so when it is said that the Lord as a form appeared because of his prema, then it means that the Lord actually appeared, right? And then he says also that this also means that even by the appearance of the Lord, Malayadhaja was still not satisfied. So he talks about the greed of the devotees for more and more association with the Lord. So it's not that he saw the Lord once and said, okay, I'm happy now. Same thing we have in Narad Muni, slightly different way. He sees the Lord in the heart, and then he immediately becomes greedy to see more. So same point is being made by Chakravarti Pad over here. Okay, we'll do a couple of more verses, then we'll pause for discussion. Verse 41. Sakshat Bhagavatoktena Guruna Harina Nripa Vishuddha Jnana Deepena Spurita Vishvato Mukham.
In this way, King Malayadwaja attained perfect knowledge because in his pure state, he was directly instructed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. By means of such enlightening transcendental knowledge, he could understand everything from all angles of vision.
Srila Prabhupada writes that the phrase Sakshat Bhagavatoena Guruna Harin is very significant. That the personality of Godhead speaks directly to the individual soul when the devotee has purified himself by rendering devotional service. Right? So the focus again is directly. And Prabhupada quotes Chatushloki verse that those who worship me directly, I give them the understanding. So the focus again is that at this stage, King Malayadwaja was enjoying a direct relationship with the personality of Godhead. He was being directly instructed by the Lord. Then it says over here that he could understand everything from all angles of vision. So when there is a pastime, so like when we are reading currently, we are reading this section of the Bhagavatam. One angle of vision is that it's the story of Puranjan. Another angle of vision is that what is the underlying allegory that this story is bringing forth. Then there may be another angle of vision. Like for instance, when sometimes people say that Ramayana, Ravan represents represents material nature, Sita Devi represents Bhakti, and Lord Ram is the personality of Godhead, and Hanuman. So there's some amount of symbolism that is attached to the various characters. That's one angle of vision. When we do in Kartik, when we do Damodar Katha, then so many acharyas, they give so many aspects to everything. The milk was boiling, the milk was feeling let down by the milk that Mother Yashoda was feeling. So at one level, it's just a sweet pastime. And then there is all this philosophical, then there is all this realizations. So as one matures, then one's understanding becomes more complete. Prabhupada once said that every time that you read my book, they will stay fresh. Why? Because different angles of vision will be revealed. Even though the verbiage is the same, everything is the same, but because the realization of the devotees change, the angles of vision change, and that's why that freshness comes. Similarly, when devotees present, then they may also present with their own very specific angle of vision, right? So, and of course, in a way, this is fine as long as they stay within the boundary of Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. In fact, in a way, it's encouraged that the devotees bring their own particular realization, which is their own angle of vision, but as long as it's not speculative. Right? We don't want to be in a situation where devotees simply say, I feel, and then fill in the blank. But at a certain level of maturity, that I feel is aligned with Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra there. So it is mentioned here that the Supreme Lord directly spoke with Malayadvaja, right? So the Lord was earlier on speaking, but he was speaking indirectly. How was he speaking indirectly? So first the Lord speaks as Paramatma. As speaking as Paramatma, he inspires the person to take shelter of a bona fide spiritual master. Then the Lord speaks through Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra, right? At this point, one can connect to the Lord through Buddhi, through Evam Buddhe Param Buddha, right? That one can connect to the Lord by deliberate spiritual intelligence. If one becomes more advanced, then one can connect to the Lord through Priti. Like 10:10 Prabhupada quotes that Bhajatam Priti Purvakam, right? That by love. When one is not advanced, then one is recommended to use one's buddhi, one's intelligence to make advancement. However, when the devotee becomes advanced, then the Lord bestows the intelligence, and the devotee uses priti. Now that intelligence is already there. So now the devotee interacts with the Lord through priti. Essentially, this is an explanation of advancement from sadhana bhakti to raga bhakti. Sadhana bhakti is mostly done through intelligence. One understands the rules and regulations and follows through. Then one is more advanced, then the Lord bestows the intelligence, and then one is now relating with the Lord through priti. The fact that priti also subsumes the one can appreciate through all angles means that priti subsumes buddhi. That when one is in spontaneous love to Krishna, he already has all the understanding of the scriptures. And especially in Gaudiya Vaishnava, we have seen that at one point the same devotees, the Goswamis, the associates of Mahaprabhu, they're singing and dancing and jumping, and everybody's condemning them, that they are emotional and they are externally performing, they're ignoring the rules and regulations. And at the other point, the same people are sitting down and writing such philosophically dense, heavy treatises on the tattva. Again, same person. Which means that they have reached a stage where Priti is also delivering Gyan. And that Gyan is more potent because it has been bestowed by the Supreme Lord. So Prabhupada says in the purport that when one is trained by the spiritual master according to the regulative principles of devotional service and is situated on the platform of spontaneous attachment for the Lord, Raga Bhakti, the Lord also gives instructions. So this distinct advantage obtained by a living soul, liberated soul. Having attained this stage, King Maladhajva was directly in touch with the Supreme Lord and was receiving instructions from him directly. Okay, we'll do one more verse, verse 42. Hare Brahmane Chatmana Param Brahma Tathatmane Vikshmano Vihayeksham Asmadupararamha.
King Maladhwaja could just observe that the super soul was sitting by his side, and that he, as an individual soul, was sitting by the side of the super soul. Since both were together, there was no need for separate interest. Thus, he ceased from such activities.
So this verse essentially talks about the depth of Maladhwaja in the maturity of his devotion. So when prema arose in Maladhwaja, then he could directly see the Lord. The last three verses have this pratyaksha being stressed. So that is the beauty of this pastimes, that it's not that they introduce new tattvas, but they give us a greater glimpse into that. Right? So like Prabhupada would say that what you study in elementary school, you study in middle school, you study in your PhD. The only difference is that you get more details. So here more and more details are being given. Here in these verses, the focus is the very personal interaction between the jiva and the Lord in an advanced stage, that he's personally seeing him, that he's personally talking to him, that they are sitting side by side with the same interest. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Pad has a long purport on this, which is a little unusual for him, but he uses this opportunity, and I guess he's aligning himself to the mood of Narada Muni, to basically talk about how does this process actually work. So he says that by the mercy of the Lord, one gets Guru. Then the Guru bestows knowledge on the disciple. The disciple, by chastely following the instructions of the Guru, makes advancement and reaches the stage of prema to the Lord. When the disciple has reached this stage of prema, the Lord's mercy to the disciple also increases. And now the Lord reveals himself personally to the devotee, so that the devotee and the Lord are face to face. When this happens, the devotee, he loses interest in everything else, in all gross and all subtle covenants. So Chakravarti Pad actually combines verse 41 and 42. And he then gives this explanation. The second part of his explanation, which I'm not going to go in, which I felt was very technical, is that he says that there are different commentators who say that these three verses, 40, 41, and 42, are actually pointing to the impersonal aspect of the Lord. And then he goes on to explain why they think it is impersonal. And then he concludes by making this point, which I liked. He says that when Mohini Avatar appeared, then same personality was giving nectar to the demigods and cheating the demons. So when the Lord appears as the scripture, the same scripture can give nectar to the devotees and can cheat those who have a demoniac personality. So essentially what he's saying is that there's no point in trying to basically explain and rebut all these Mayavadis, because that's the nature of the Lord, that he's reciprocating according to the mood. The devotees are looking for nectar, and these verses are generating nectars. The demons are coming with a negative personality, and the same verses will be cheating them. And then he concludes by saying, devotees do not accept these interpretations. So he's just saying that better to simply reject all. Okay, so let me pause here and see if we have any comments.
We were discussing yesterday about the Brahmana's wives. The Krishna and Balram became hungry, and then the cowherd boys went to beg alms to the Brahmanas. They didn't give, and then they go to the Brahmanas' wives, and they give whatever they wanted. So there was question about women are not less intelligent; they are very highly intelligent, and this. So that kind of discussion went in that direction. So now you are telling that when there is love, the priti, the highest stage, Lord gives the intelligence that is even much better than the intelligence that one gets in the initial stages of the sadhana bhakti, Vaidya sadhana bhakti. So that makes a lot of sense actually. If you see the topmost devotees are women with such a deep love for Krishna, and they had the highest intelligence to what to accept, what to reject, and so that's wonderful. Thank you. I thought it just so much in common with what we discussed yesterday, and it added that one more point that from you I learned that one today.
So it's a very good point. I should make a note of it, and just extending the point you're making that when the different grade of the gopis who appeared in the rasa dance. So one section of the gopis represent the Vedas personified, and they are considered to be the junior gopis. So their service was mostly witnessing. They were witnessing. So the gopis who were so-called simple village damsels, they were the ones who were dancing with Krishna. So then you can understand that they have already crossed the stages of. So they were the sages of Dattakaranya who had perfected Astanga Yoga. There was the Vedas personified who had perfected Gyan, and they were all standing and witnessing Bhakti dance with Krishna, which means that it included all of that. And on our own, we can get a little bit, but when it is bestowed by Krishna, it's a lot more. That's why Prabhupada makes this 2 times he refers to 10-10 in his purpose. Thank you, Prabhu.
And just one more thing, Prabhu, just to make sure that my understanding is right. In the beginning, when you said connect with the Supreme through spiritual intelligence, that is Buddhi Yoga, right? That's Buddhi Yoga, or in the form of Jnana Yoga. Whereas in Tadami Buddhi Yogam 10:10 is actually Bhakti Yoga. Am I correct?
That is correct, because that is bestowed by Krishna.
Okay.
Yeah, right. The earlier intelligence, generally Prabhupada would use that, or Vyavasatmika Buddhi, right? So he would use this phrase where one is using their intelligence to strictly follow the rules and regulations of bhakti, or like what we are doing, to understand. We are not fully realizing it, but we're just trying to understand. So we're using our intelligence. That definitely nurtures bhakti, but it's not going to take us to prema, but it definitely nurtures bhakti. Okay, thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you very much, Prabhuji, for the class. And also I thank Nandagopal Prabhu for his bringing that comparison between Vyavasatmika Buddhi. Like, he brought that point and you explained that, the both the intelligences, how we should see. Thank you for that explanation, Prabhuji. And question, Prabhuji, like in the last class, we discussed that Malayadvaja as a spiritual master for Vaidarbhi, that is Puranjana in this life. So I was with the understanding that he was a perfected devotee then. And here we are discussing like he took lifetimes of meditation to achieve Krishna. And he has direct audience of Krishna. So in this case, it was completely a different allegorical description, Prabhuji, or it is considered the same husband of Vaidarbhi. He further improved his perfection to the level of having the audience.
That's my understanding. It's the same storyline in the allegory, but it basically follows the storyline of Malayadvaja being an advanced devotee and going from the stage of being an advanced devotee to a perfected devotee. Right? So it's the journey. At some point, the allegory breaks because later on, we in the last verse we saw, right, Malayadvaja dies. Now, this does not mean spiritual master died, right? So the allegory breaks at some point, but the phase that you're talking about, that definitely fits within the allegorical story. It essentially represents that as the guru is practicing their spiritual life, so what is happening to Vaidarbhi? She is also making advancements. Prabhupada will talk about it. How is she making advancement? She's not doing any austerities, right? How is she making advancements? Simply by serving Malayadvaja. So Prabhupada makes this point. Disciple makes advancements simply by serving the spiritual master, right? So it is even easier for the disciple. Right? All you have to do is serve your guru. Your guru will take you back to.
Yes, bro. Yeah, last class you explained that even to the extent of slackening our devotional service, if it helps in serving guru, like.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna, just one comment. I mean, the focus has taken away from Puranjana as the wife. Now it's more on the husband, because now the husband is the one responsible to liberate the wife, something like that.
You're right, Prabhu. The focus is on the relationship between Vaidarbhi and Malayadvaja. So the advancement of Malayadvaja is talked about, but essentially what is being talked about is that relationship will take you to perfection. That because Vaidarbhi was with a lot of chastity serving her husband, then that in itself was enough for her to get perfection. So we haven't reached that point in the story, but that's what it is leading us to.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so there are no more points for discussion. We'll move towards 43. Patim parmadharm gyama vedarbi malaya dvajam premna paryacharatitva bhogan sa pati devata.
The daughter of King Vidarbha accepted her husband all in all as a supreme. She gave up all sensual enjoyment and in complete renunciation followed the principles of her husband, who was so advanced, thus she remained engaged in his service.
So we see now that the focus has now come back to Vaidarbhi or Puranjan, and in 4 verses from 43 to 46, the essential message that is given is that if you look beyond the allegory, that a devotee needs to serve the Guru at all points of time, up to the very end of one's life. So one should not think that the Guru is only needed for the initial stages, and then I become as good as Guru or better than Guru. And that is Mayavad conception. That I take a Guru and then I take the Guru's position. Right? So in the Vaishnava conception, one continues to take complete surrender of the Guru at all points of time. So Prabhupada says that figuratively, King Malayadwaja is the spiritual master and his wife Vaidarbhi is the disciple. The disciple accepts the spiritual master as the personality of Godhead. So Prabhupada quotes Guru Ashtaka, Sakshat Dharitvena, that one directly accepts the Guru as the personality of Godhead. One should accept the spiritual master not in the sense that the Mayavadi philosophers do, but the way recommended here. That because the Guru is the most confidential servant of the Lord, he should be treated exactly like the Lord. Should never be neglected or disobeyed like an ordinary person. Prabhupada also comments on the storyline, and he notes that if a wife is chaste, then she automatically gets the same destination of the husband. So it is said that a chaste wife gets all the pious benefits of the husband, and the husband gets all the sins of the wife. So here the focus is more on the positive, that if Prabhupada says that she will automatically attain the spiritual perfections of her husband. So if a disciple gets a bona fide spiritual master, simply by satisfying him, he can attain a similar opportunity to serve the personality of God. That's what our training is, right? When we do deity worship, then we offer all the paraphernalias to first the Guru and the Param Guru, and then to the Lord. Because we never think that we are offering it ourselves. We always say that we are assisting our Guru. So the idea is that we are trying to sign up for being his assistant, so that when the spiritual master himself is directly serving the Lord, he says, okay, I have one good assistant. Let me call him also. So because we have ingratiated ourselves in that role, then we are able to what was the word that I'm not sure if Prabhupada said it or a disciple said it, but it was a phrase that was popular, that by holding on to the dhoti of Srila Prabhupada, we can go back to the spiritual world. Okay, verse 44. Chirvas vratakshama venibhut siroroha pabhavupa patim shanta shikha shantam ivanalam. Go ahead, Mataji. You're on mute if you're speaking.
Oh, sorry, Prabhu. The daughter of King Vidarbha wore all garments, and she was lean and thin because of her vows of austerity. Since she did not arrange her hair, it became entangled and twisted in locks. Although she remained always near her husband, she was as silent and unagitated as the flame of an undisturbed fire.
So, Shikha Shantam Ivanalam. So she was peaceful like the coals of a fire without flame. And Prabhupada explains the analogy that when the coals are burnt, then initially there is smoke and disturbance. Similarly, initially when a man and a woman come together, there may be some agitation of the senses. However, by following the regulative principles of the respective ashrams, the Grihastha ashram, here the focus is on Vanaprastha ashram, but whichever ashram, by following the regulative principles of the ashram, these agitations become pacified. So simply by engaging in the service of her exalted husband, who is Prabhupada says, who must be a pure devotee, the wife will never be agitated by sex impulses. The disciple also attains the same control of the senses simply by serving his guru. And so there is a lot of glorification of the potency of serving the guru. Prabhupada also writes a fairly elaborate purport on. So he takes some of the specific descriptions in the verse, and then he uses that to describe the conduct of a wife when a qualified husband is following Vanaprastha. So he's talking about the culture of Vanaprastha, specifically from the perspective of a wife. So again, this is Prabhupada commenting on the external storyline, mostly for preaching purposes. So I'm going to summarize the purport. So he says that because the wife or a woman is weaker than the man, so this weakness is expressed in this verse with the word upapatim. So upa means near, like upavas or upanayanam. Upa means near. It also means almost equal to. So the wife is upapatim, which means that wife is close to the husband and also almost equal to. And Prabhupada says almost equal to means that slightly weaker. Then chiravas refers to very old torn garments. So the wife especially should remain austere. She should only accept the bare necessities of life. So again, this is the conduct of the wife in the Vanaprastha stage. Then third, Prabhupada says, hair combing is one of the main businesses of women. In the Vanaprastha stage, the wife should not take care of her hair. Thus her hair will become tangled in knots. In this way, both husband and wife can advance in spiritual consciousness. Not by just not combing hair one advances in spiritual consciousness, but by not focusing on the externals. That's the point Prabhupada is making. This advanced stage is called Paramahamsa stage. And once it is obtained, both husband and wife are actually liberated from bodily consciousness. right? And we see the same, almost this exact same pastime with Prithu in fourth canto, right? Chapter 33, when Prithu Maharaj was performing austerities, he took Vanaprastha and Archie was serving him, and she also described that she became lean and weak, but she was very, very happy. Now, going beyond the allegory, that given that the wife represents the disciple and the husband represents the guru, this is actually referring to the conduct of a disciple in the mature stage of his association with his guru. Right? Vanaprastha is a mature stage. So in this stage, what Prabhupada recommends that if the disciple remains steady in the service of the spiritual master, he need no longer fear falling down into the clutches of Maya. So essentially, that is the purport of the allegory. So in the course of practicing bhakti, there are always challenges. But as long as one keeps the big picture in mind, bhakti has great advantages. And the obstacles that one faces in bhakti, they suddenly become very, very minor compared to the benefits, right? So in every ashram, there is a certain culture that is recommended. This verse is talking about the culture of Vanaprastha. And in the 11th canto, it is said that when Krishna was going back to his eternal abode, then he closed his eyes. And then the acharyas explain why. So it said he closed his eyes and meditated on himself. And the acharyas explain why. That because as Krishna was going, and he was crossing over Swargalok, Mahalok, and Jnanalok, Tapalok. So all the residents on those planets, they were praying to Krishna, saying, please come, stop by, and spend some time with us. So Krishna closed his eyes, saying that, I don't see you, so sorry, I cannot respond to your invitation. Similarly, what this verse is talking about is closing your eyes to material engagement. And as one closes one's eyes, one's spiritual eyes automatically open. Moving on to verse 45. Ajanati priyatma priyatma. Okay. Ajanati priyatmam yado paratam agna sushtira shanam asadya yatha purvam upacharat.
The daughter of King Vidarbha continued as usual to serve her husband, who was seated in a steady posture until she could ascertain that he had passed away from the body.
So this indicates that Vaibhava was serving her husband with very minimal conversation or social interaction. Right? So she only realized that he had left his body when she felt that his body became cold. Prabhupada says that it appears that the queen did not even talk to her husband while serving. She would simply perform her prescribed duties without talk. Thus, she did not stop rendering service until she could ascertain that her husband passed from the body. This is also the mood of service of the more mature disciples to the Guru. That the focus is on service and not so much on social interactions. And sometimes devotees, they will, they get a chance for some personal service. They may be driving their spiritual master to the airport, or they may be spending some time And then basically then they use that as a time for conversations or social interaction. And in itself, it's neither good nor bad. Depends on what the spiritual master wants. But the point is that Prabhupada is making that should not be the focus. One should not look for opportunities of the Guru just so that they can get one-on-one time or personal interaction time. The service should be the only reason that motivates the disciple. And if the conversation happens, so be it. If it does not happen, so be it. Okay, so moving on to verse 46. Yada no palibhetagra usmanam patiyorarchati asit samvigna hridaya yuta brast mrigi yatha.
While she was serving her husband by massaging his legs, she could feel that his feet were no longer warm and could just understand that he had already passed from the body. She felt great anxiety upon being left alone, bereft of her husband's company. She felt exactly as a deer feels upon being separated from its mate.
Prabhupada writes that as soon as the circulation of blood and air within the body stops, it is to be understood that the soul within the body has left. The stoppage of the blood circulation is perceived when the hand and feet lose heat. One tests whether a body is alive or not by feeling the heart's palpitation and the coolness of the feet and hands. Prabhupada is commenting on the storyline. Okay, moving on to the next verse. Atmanam so chati dinam abundam vikla vikva shrubi stanava shichaya vipine suswaram parurodasa.
Being now alone and a widow in that forest, the daughter of Vidarbha began to lament, incessantly shedding tears which soaked her breast and crying very loudly.
So Prabhupada notes that the lamentation of the queen represents the lamentation of the disciple at the passing away of the Guru. So in the purport, he says that figuratively, the queen is supposed to be the disciple of the king. And when the mortal body of the spiritual master expires, the disciple should cry exactly as the queen cries when the king leaves his body. However, the disciple and spiritual master are never separated because the spiritual master always keeps company with the disciple as long as the disciple follows the instructions of the spiritual master. This is the point that Prabhupada often made, especially when he was in the final years of his pastimes, and his disciples could understand that they don't have a lot of time with Prabhupada. Prabhupada would make this point again and again, that I will always be with you in my words. And here Prabhupada makes this another important point, that as long as the disciple is following the instructions of the Guru. Because really speaking, the instruction of the relationship between the disciple and the Guru is predicated on this, that it's not so much predicated on whether the person got a spiritual name or was sitting in yajna, got a kantimala. Those are all samskars. They're there to formalize the relationship, to create an impression that now this relationship is formalized. Actually speaking, the relationship is established by the fact that the disciple is following the instructions of the spiritual master. Many of Prabhupada's disciples, they went away. And once Prabhupada was asked that you have initiated so many people, so many of your disciples have gone away, what do you think about it? And then Prabhupada said, they were never my disciples. This person said, but they sat in the yajna with you, you initiated them, and Prabhupada said, no, they were never my disciples. And the point Prabhupada was making was that when they stopped following the instructions of the Guru, they stopped being the disciple. So then Prabhupada says that physical presence is called Papu. As long as the Guru is physically present, the disciple should serve the physical body of the spiritual master. And when the spiritual master is no longer physically existing, disciple should serve the instructions of the spiritual master. So, important point in Prabhupada is making Guru-disciple relation that both are important. So one should not say that I'm following the instructions of my Guru and basically neglect, even the Guru is physically present, should not neglect the Guru. Say, well, I'm following instructions, so I'm advanced, and the Guru needs some personal service, and the disciple is following just the Vani, right? So Vapu is important. And when the spiritual master is not present, then Vani is the way. Initially, it is both Vapu and Vani. Later on, it is Vani. So, in the presence of the Guru, then the disciple is engaged in Vapu Vani Seva. Right? And when the disciple is gone, Vani Seva. I'm sorry, when the spiritual master is gone, Vani Seva. Okay, let's do verse 48. Utestutesta Rajrishe Imamudadi Mekhalam Dasyobhyakshat bandhubhyo Vibhyatim patum marasi.
O best of kings, please get up, get up. Just see this world surrounded by water and infested with rogues and so-called kings. This world is very much afraid, and it is your duty to protect her.
So I could not fully understand the translation. I mean, Srila Prabhupada explained in the purport. Prabhupada said this world is very much afraid, and it is your duty to protect her. So it may be pointing to Mother Earth, that Mother Earth is being harassed by rogue kings, and it's the duty of the saintly people, the Raj Rishis, to protect her. In terms of the metaphor, this verse is talking about the sorry situation of the material world and the protection that is offered by the spiritual master to the conditioned soul. Right, so this is what this verse is talking about. This entreaty by Vaidarbhi, that I'm surrounded by water and infested by rogues and so-called kings. That's the description of the material world, right? And she's basically now seeking protection from the Guru. So in the 4th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that he descends to establish the principles of religion, right? So sometimes he descends himself, but often he sends his agents in the form of spiritual master. And they establish dharma according to the instructions of the Lord. So Prabhupada has a very powerful purport, and once again, as I mentioned, a lot of these facts are very well known to us, but every time Prabhupada presents them, it basically gives a little deeper realization. So I'll summarize it. So Prabhupada says that religion means abiding by the orders of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Right? Same point Krishna makes in the 16th chapter. So that is what is dharma. Religion means that you abide by the orders of the Personality of Godhead. This is the real purpose of the human form of life, which is to live a dharmic life, which means following the instructions of the human form of life. Then Prabhupada says that ultimately, what this means is surrendering to the Lord. Right? Because when you're following somebody's instructions, you're essentially surrendering to that person. That I'll do what you ask me to do. So, following religious principles means surrendering to the Lord. So, Prabhupada establishes this. Then he says that the duty of the acharyas is to spread the religious principles and induce everyone to follow them. Then, by the practical way of following these religious principles is by following the process of bhakti. So you see how the logic Prabhupada is building. First, he said that dharma means following the instructions of the Lord. The purpose of human life is to execute dharma. Executing dharma means surrendering to the Lord, which essentially means the purpose of human life is surrendering to the Lord. Then Prabhupada starts speaking about what is dharma. That the acharyas are the one who, on behalf of the Supreme Lord, this is going back to 4.8, that Krishna comes himself or sends his representative. So the acharyas, they spread the religious principles, so they preach it, and they also motivate others to join. Then what are these religious principles? That the essence of the religious principle is to follow the process of the bhakti in terms of one or more of his 9 angas, beginning with hearing and chanting. Then Prabhupada says that when the acharyas disappear, these principles are misinterpreted. Therefore, it is the duty of the disciple to become well trained by the guru and ensure that the tradition of following the principles of bhakti are well maintained for posterity. So this is the punchline of the purport. So he establishes the importance of dharma. Then Prabhupada establishes the position of the guru, and then he talks about the importance of the disciple. That the disciple should become well trained by the guru so that he can then carry on the tradition. And Prabhupada would say to his disciples that each one of you should become a guru and initiate thousands of disciples. Each one of you should write books just like I have done. He did not want to maintain exclusivity, that I am the only guru and my books will be the only books. He encouraged this, and most of Prabhupada disciples, when they write books, they always indicate the submission to this instruction. Just like Prabhupada received the same instruction from his guru. So in the purport, essentially, Prabhupada is talking about the importance of the duty of a disciple. And here he talks about 2 things. That while the guru is present, the disciple should become well trained by the guru. When the guru is not present, then the duty of the disciple is to carry on the mission of the guru. Now, of course, he can carry on while the guru is present, basically as an extension of the guru, and then later on, he understands the instruction and follows them forward. Prabhupada says, at the present moment, practically the entire world is afraid of rogues and non-devotees. Therefore, this Krishna consciousness movement is started to save the world from irreligious principles. Everyone should cooperate with this movement in order to bring about actual peace and happiness in the world. Okay, so I'll pause here and see if there's any discussion or comments.
Prabhu, just one thing, maybe long past the stage that I'm just asking this. Puranjana in the previous life was a man, and then he becomes a woman. takes a woman's body, it's because of his attraction to his wife at the time of death, right? So what is the allegorical significance of man becoming a woman? Is it the person becomes a disciple and getting association of a guru like a Malayadvaj? Is that the allegorical significance, or any other significance is there?
So there are two aspects to this, one positive, one negative. You talked about the positive part, that because of his piety and good fortune, he gets the shelter of a guru. The negative part, Prabhupada comments, is that because Puranjan was so much engrossed in material sense gratification, he inadvertently performed sinful activities, because of which he got a woman's body. So from the allegorical perspective, what it talks about, what it means is that not that one should go out and perform sinful activities, but when a living entity is deprived of the opulences that come with piety, their heart becomes even more open to spirituality. So you remember in the verse where it said that Malayadhaj was in the southern part of India, and Prabhupada talks about how people aspire to take birth in India and Kali Yuga, so the Earth planet, which from one extent is for the demigods, it's a fallen birth, right? But still they aspire to engage in it, because it opens their heart to spirituality, right? So it's just to develop a sense of humility. Again, it's not meant that one goes out and performs sinful activity in the hopes of being a spiritual master. That is already given. You have performed sinful activities. Now one can take that and develop humility and seek the shelter of a spiritual master. Okay. Any other questions, comments?
Hare Krishna Prabhu. We understood that King Malayadhwaja took several births before he could get liberation or progress.
You mean King Puranjan? King Puranjan, right?
No, is it also Malayadhwaja also? Prabhupada saying in the verse.
Okay, you're right. King Malayadhwaja also.
That means Vidarbhi also in this allegory must have taken several births.
Yes.
And the question would be now, with the same husband all the time. We don't know.
We have what?
With the same husband all the time.
Same one, yeah. Prabhupada would say that your spiritual master is eternal.
Yeah, in the allegory of a spiritual master, yes.
So that was one of the topics of discussion. Prabhupada would give different answers, slightly different answers. Prabhupada would say that since you have become my disciple, every time you come back, I'll be forced to come back. So he says, don't make me come back again. Perfect your life, otherwise I'll be forced to come back. Other time it was said that the position of a guru is eternal and different personalities will take. But here at least the sense is that every time Malayadhwaja was taking birth, Vaibhava was also taking birth and continuing it. Again, it's two things here. One is an allegorical story, so difficult to scrutinize. The whole thing in allegories is that one should only extract those that are meant for extraction, not. So it's Narad Muni's allegory, right? So it's meant for extraction. And the second is that this 100 years of the demigods, this could also be understood that, as Vishwanath Chakravarti says, that this could also be understood as it took him a while. In that very birth, it took him a while to get perfection. Prabhupada says many births, Vishnu Chakravarti says that it just took him a long time and died. Vishnu Chakravarti doesn't say many births. He says it just took him a while to get that perfection. Either way, the main point is that the reaching the perfection of bhakti requires sustained practice over time. That's the main message that's been.
And also during that time, we don't know the exact time, and they were living longer than us. We live only 100 years, but they were living most probably hundreds, thousand years at that time.
That's also possible. Yeah.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Okay, so there are no more comments. We can stop. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripasindhubhyeva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Anant Koti Vaishnavinda ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Jai Gaur Premanand. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much.